over 12 years in cybersecurity. And oh boy, thinking of some of the things that I regret actually made me cringe. So today I will be talking about some of my most serious regrets while working through my cybersecurity career journey. And some of these things are so simple, yet so overlooked. Hi friends, welcome or welcome back. I'm Venicia. Let's get into this video. Okay, so definitely the first regret could have saved me so much time, so much heartache, so much energy really, and it is simply just having the confidence to ask enough questions. Now, you know, when starting out in a new journey, it is even more complicated when you are in a job and you're the only woman in a room sitting there and there's all these professionals and they know what they're talking about, and you sit there with that inferior feeling of, I don't want to ask because maybe it's a silly question. But in my experience, someone else in the room would eventually end up asking something that's similar to what you would have asked, and then that answer is shared, or that bit of information and guidance is shared, or no one asks the question and then you leave out of there and you have to go and do the research, and I would have to go and find the answers. But what that takes is, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, energy, but still I would sit with the mindset that I'm not really sure if that was the right answer. And that was such a silly thing to do, and it is really something that I regret, because one thing I've learned in this industry is that people are willing to help. There is no one that is not willing to help you and to share information. It is a collaborative space. No person knows everything about cybersecurity, no matter how long they've been in the industry. So asking the questions, trust me, will save you so much time and so much energy and so much confusion in the long run. So save yourself that time and ask questions. It doesn't matter how silly it seems. It doesn't matter how senior the person in the room is. If you have a question, right now, these days it's virtual, unmute your mic and ask your question, or type it in the chat box and ask it. Trust me, that is a regret that could have saved me so much time and energy. Just ask your question. Okay, the second one, I wish that I would have learned earlier on. And that is actually learning the fundamentals of PowerShell. Now, I've made a few videos which I will link up in terms of understanding the basics of cybersecurity, what's important, what are some of the core fundamentals, etc. But one thing that I personally wish that I would have learned early on is the core fundamentals of PowerShell, PowerShell scripting, and then continue to use PowerShell in my everyday life, because PowerShell is such a core fundamental way of doing things. And especially as I've progressed in my career, I mean, I've now learned some of the basics of PowerShell, and I can run some PowerShell scripts, and you know, I can deploy certain things using PowerShell, etc. But it would have been so much easier if I learned PowerShell early on, because then I would have saved myself a lot of time with extracting information, especially from places like Active Directory, from the Windows OS, from user management, etc. And PowerShell is also highly utilized with deploying scripts, etc. into the Azure cloud. So that is one of my regrets, is that maybe coding is not that much required, but I definitely wish that I would have gained more traction in the use of PowerShell throughout my career journey, especially for those who want to become hands-on technical and who want to do security analysis and security engineering. Learning PowerShell early on can save you a ton of time and a ton of effort, because scripting is the way to go. Okay, then this one is so important, and this one is one that I really want everybody to be clear on. Taking certifications and firstly failing the exam first time around is not the end of the world. I wish I would have known that. I wish I would have had more courage to not be so discouraged when I decide to take a certification and I fail the exam, which has happened to me, and it was so discouraging. And for one of them, I just didn't go ahead and go and rewrite the exam. Now, granted, in the future state of my career, I don't actually regret not rewriting that certification because I don't need it for the role that I'm in at the moment or for any of the other roles that I progressed through. But taking certifications, don't deter or avoid taking certifications if you have failed. There is always another chance. You can always retake the exam, prepare again, and get up to scratch with some of the gaps that you would have had in what you were studying prior to that exam, and understand where the difficult points are and retake the certification. It is not the end of the world. If you fail an exam, fail forward. Use it to your benefit, to what you have learned, the insights you have gained from the exam experience, and go for it and write that exam again. I wish I would have known that it is not such a major thing to fail a certification exam. It is not major. You can just book the exam again, prepare again, and rewrite that exam. Okay, then, one of the key things within the tech industry and within cybersecurity is definitely to explore more and to move around more. And this is one of the regrets that I have had. Early on in my career, I didn't necessarily move around as much as I should have. And so staying for too long in one particular role can be a bit misconceiving or preconceived that you actually know more than what you do about the industry. Now, stay with me here. If you are a security engineer for 5 years, perhaps you moving from a junior engineer to an intermediate engineer to a senior engineer. But here's the thing, you are only operating in the one domain of security engineering and you don't actually know anything else that is going on in all of the other domains of cybersecurity. So one of the core things that I really do regret is not moving around and dabbling around in the early stages of my career. So in the early stages of my career, I did security engineering and I did it for quite a while, for a number of years. And if I had at that stage moved into analysis or tried governance or consulting, etc., then maybe my journey to acceleration would have been even faster than what it has been. Now, I don't have any complaints. I have explored many spaces within cybersecurity, but that is definitely something that I would say I would have changed early on if I knew how massive, broad, and dynamic this industry is. In cybersecurity, like 18 months to 2 years in one role is probably all you need to be able to explore that role. Now, there are some people that are in a role, they love that role, and they just want to progress in that particular space. So if you are in security engineering and you want to be an engineer and you just want to progress in that space, then great. Do what works for you. But if you're somebody that wants to explore this industry and move to different places, etc., then don't sit around for too long. Like, move around as soon as you've got the grasp and the handle on the role that you're in and gained experience in the role that you're in. 18 months to 2 years is probably a good time for you to move around and explore a whole different domain and a whole different area of work within cybersecurity. And of course, when you move around, you also elevate your career because you're adding more skills to your portfolio and you get more money. Okay, and then I think the final thing that I definitely regret doing, especially early on in my career, is thinking that I must do everything myself and I must save the whole digital universe on my own. That's probably an overstatement. But here's the fact. There's an entire team of IT professionals, cybersecurity professionals, business professionals that work together to solve the problem of cybercrime. You have a specific component of that problem and you do not need to do everything yourself. Don't do everything yourself and overwork yourself and try to overcompensate and spend hours and hours and hours trying to find one piece and one bit of information. It can get really, really tedious. It can get really, really daunting. And I remember in the earliest stages of my cybersecurity engineering career, I would go through hours and hours and hours of vulnerability assessment reports and data and try and match it up against systems, etc. So you don't have to do everything on your own. You can work with different teams. You can delegate things to different people. Take the portion of work that you are comfortable with taking up and solve that problem end to end, and then move to the next problems. Don't add more things on your plate than what you can handle, because burnout is a real thing, and burnout in this industry is real. There is already too few professionals to fill up all the roles, and therefore we are already doing more than a lot of people in other industries and in other job roles. And so with that, if you still take on more and more on top of that and think that you need to solve this problem on your own, you will experience burnout, and it is not a fun thing. So definitely my biggest regret is not knowing my limits in terms of what I can take on, not managing my workload effectively, and then experiencing burnout numerous times. You can still achieve a lot in this industry, and you can still be an overachiever and accelerate your career without taking on too much, putting yourself under too much pressure, and experiencing burnout. Alright friends, if you made it till the end of this video, then please leave a like, because clearly you enjoyed this content, and subscribe to my channel for more cybersecurity content. Catch you next time.